Hashtag I accidentally connected to my wife's car Bluetooth and heard her planning with her ex-lover. The first thing I heard was my own name. Not from my wife. From a man I hadn't heard speak in 11 years. I was standing in our garage with one hand on a grocery bag and the other holding my phone, waiting for the Bluetooth connection in my wife's SUV to stop searching. She had asked me to move her car because she was leaving early the next morning, and I had climbed into the driver's seat without thinking. Then my phone connected. A call was already playing through the speakers. Once the transfer clears, Claire won't be able to stop us. My hand froze above the gear shift. The voice belonged to Daniel Mercer, my wife's ex. I hadn't seen him since before Claire and I got married. As far as I knew, he had moved across the country, built a life somewhere in Oregon, and disappeared completely from hers. Then Claire's voice came through the speakers. I know, but you have to wait until Friday. I stopped breathing. The grocery bag slipped from my fingers. An orange rolled across the garage floor and disappeared beneath a shelf. For several seconds I didn't move. I couldn't. My brain kept trying to find another explanation. Some innocent reason why my wife was sitting in her car talking to the man she had sworn was no longer part of her life. Then Daniel laughed quietly. You're sure she won't suspect anything? Claire answered after a pause. She's my wife. She trusts me. That sentence hurt more than the fact that Daniel was there. Not because she had said she trusted me, because she had said it like trust was a weakness she intended to use. I pulled my phone from the dashboard and stared at the screen. The call wasn't coming from my phone. It was Claire's phone, still paired with the vehicle from earlier. Somehow, when I opened the door, the SUV had automatically resumed the conversation through its speakers. I should have ended the call. I should have stepped out. Instead, I stood in the dark garage and listened. Daniel lowered his voice. And the house? Already handled. What about the account? Almost. There was a silence. Then Claire whispered, she won't know until it's too late. She. Not me. That was the moment I realized something was even stranger than the affair. They weren't talking about cheating. They were talking about destroying someone. And I was almost certain that someone was me. My name is Mara Bennett. I was 38 years old that summer. And for 12 years I had believed I understood the woman sleeping beside me. I had met Claire when I was 26, during a professional certification course in Chicago. I was working in financial compliance for a small healthcare company, and Claire was finishing a graduate program in organizational psychology. She was funny in a quiet way, the kind of person who could make one sentence sound like an inside joke. She noticed details. That was what attracted me to her. She remembered how I took coffee. She noticed when I changed my glasses. She could tell from the way I closed a door whether I had had a difficult day. When we married 3 years later, my mother cried through the entire ceremony. My father hugged Claire afterward and said, "Take care of my girl." Claire smiled. "I will." For years, I believed she had. We bought our house 7 years into the marriage. It wasn't extravagant, but it had a wide front porch, a maple tree in the backyard, and enough sunlight in the kitchen to make Sunday mornings feel special. I built my career slowly. No family money. No shortcuts. I earned a bachelor's degree at night while working full-time, then completed my master's after we were married. Eventually, I became a senior compliance manager for a regional medical equipment company. Claire worked in consulting. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had savings, retirement accounts, the house, 2 cars, and a life that looked stable from the outside. At least I thought it did. That night in the garage, I listened for another 7 minutes. 7 minutes was long enough to destroy 12 years. Claire told Daniel that the documents were ready. Daniel asked whether I had signed anything. Not directly, she said. Good. But Mara thinks it's part of the refinancing. She doesn't read everything? Claire laughed. She trusts me. Again, those 2 words became a knife. I reached toward the dashboard and ended the connection. The garage went silent. For a moment, I could hear only the refrigerator humming inside the house. I picked up the orange. Then I walked inside. Claire was in the kitchen. She stood at the counter cutting strawberries, wearing the blue sweater I had bought her in Vermont 3 Christmases earlier. She looked up. You're home early. I put the grocery bag down. Traffic wasn't bad. She smiled. Did you move my car? Yeah. Thanks. I nodded. She went back to the strawberries. I watched her knife move through the fruit. Slow. Precise. Normal. That was the strangest part. Nothing about her looked different. She still had the same small crease between her eyebrows when she concentrated. The same habit of pushing her hair behind her ear. The same silver ring she wore on her right hand. I almost asked her. I almost said Daniel's name. But something stopped me. I had spent 12 years learning how Claire behaved when she knew she was right. I wanted to know how she behaved when she thought she had already won. So I kissed her cheek. Smells good. She turned slightly. Strawberries. I meant dinner. She smiled. You're weird. I smiled back. Long day. She didn't notice my hands were shaking. That night, Claire fell asleep beside me at 10:43. I stayed awake until 3:18. At 3:19, I made my first decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Because whatever Claire and Daniel were planning had required time, paperwork, money, and preparation. That meant I had time too. The next morning, I called my attorney. Her name was Evelyn Park. She had represented me once before when my father passed away, and there had been a dispute over his estate. I told her I needed a confidential consultation. She didn't ask why over the phone. Come in at 4. I spent the entire day pretending nothing had changed. At work, I reviewed contracts, answered emails, corrected a compliance report, joined a meeting about an audit. Nobody knew that every notification on my phone made my stomach tighten. At 4, I sat across from Evelyn in her office and told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she folded her hands. Do you have copies of the documents you mentioned? No. Do you know what the transfer was? No. Do you know whether your name is attached to anything? I don't know. She leaned back. Then don't confront her. Those words sounded almost identical to the decision I had already made. Evelyn continued. Don't access accounts you're not authorized to access. Don't impersonate anyone. Don't threaten either of them. Don't destroy anything. From this point forward, you document what you legally have access to, and you let professionals determine what it means. I nodded. What do you think they're doing? I think you're asking me to guess before seeing the evidence. She paused. But whatever it is, they believe you won't discover it until after the deadline. That sentence followed me home. The deadline. Friday. I remembered the word Claire had used. Friday. That gave me 4 days. On Wednesday morning, I found the first clue. It was sitting in plain sight. A folder on the dining room table. The label read, Mortgage Review. I almost walked past it. Then I noticed the corner of a document sticking out. My name. I didn't open it. Instead, I photographed the outside and called Evelyn. She told me to leave it alone. That evening, Claire came home with flowers. She rarely bought flowers. She put them in a vase and said, I thought the house needed something cheerful. I looked at the flowers. Then at her. Beautiful. She smiled. You've been quiet. Work. Are you okay? I nearly laughed. She was asking me if I was okay while secretly preparing something that could destroy my financial future. But I only said, I'm tired. She touched my shoulder. You should take tomorrow off. I looked at her hand. There was nothing cruel in the gesture. That almost made it worse. Because betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it wears your favorite sweater and asks whether you're sleeping enough. Thursday morning, Evelyn called. Don't panic. Nobody says that before good news. What happened? I reviewed public records. She explained that a consulting company had recently been registered under a name connected to Daniel. The company had no visible operations, no website, no employees, but its registered address belonged to a law office specializing in asset transfers and corporate restructuring. My stomach tightened. Why would Claire be involved? I don't know yet. Then Evelyn asked something that changed everything. Mara, has Claire ever asked you to sign anything related to your house or investments? I thought about it. Then I remembered. 3 months earlier, Claire had brought me a stack of papers after dinner. Just routine refinancing paperwork, she had said. I had signed 2 pages because I was exhausted and she had been standing beside me explaining each section. At the time, I hadn't questioned it. Now I remembered one thing. She hadn't let me keep a copy. I called the mortgage company myself. The representative sounded confused. There hasn't been a refinancing application. My mouth went dry. Are you sure? Yes, ma'am. I thanked him. Then I sat in my parked car for 10 minutes. I had spent 12 years believing Claire was the person who protected me. Now I was realizing that she might have been quietly learning exactly how much I owned. That afternoon, Evelyn discovered something worse. The documents Claire had asked me to sign were connected to a proposed transfer of certain marital assets into a business entity. The transfer hadn't completed yet. Evelyn told me not to panic. I wasn't panicking. Something inside me had gone very still. Because now I understood why Daniel had asked whether I had signed anything. They weren't trying to take my money after a divorce. They were trying to move it before I even knew there was a divorce coming. Friday arrived. Claire woke early. She kissed my forehead. I have a meeting. With who? She hesitated for less than a second. Client. I smiled. Good luck. She left at 7:12. At 7:19 my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. A man's voice said, Mara? Yes. This is Daniel Mercer. My heart stopped. He continued before I could respond. I think you deserve to know what's happening. I looked through the window at Claire's empty driveway. Why? Because Claire told me you wouldn't listen. I said nothing. Daniel exhaled. I believed her. That sentence sounded wrong. Not because it surprised me. Because he sounded ashamed. I made mistakes with Claire years ago, he continued. I left. She married you. I didn't contact her for 11 years. Why did you come back? She contacted me. Silence. Why? Money. I closed my eyes. Whose? Yours. The word landed quietly, almost gently. Daniel told me Claire had approached him 6 months earlier with an idea. She wanted to create a consulting company using marital assets as startup capital. The company would eventually acquire another business. Daniel would run operations. Claire would handle finances. Then, once everything was profitable, she planned to leave the marriage and claim the assets had been business-related. But Daniel said that wasn't the whole story. What aren't you telling me? He was silent. Then he said, She told me you were going to leave her. I frowned. I wasn't. I know that now. How? Because I met you. I hadn't met him. Not recently. Then he said, She showed me messages. My stomach tightened. What messages? Texts where you supposedly said you were unhappy with the marriage. That you wanted the house. That you wanted to push her out financially. I stared at the steering wheel. They were fabricated. Or manipulated. And Claire had been building a story in which I was the aggressor. Daniel continued. I eventually realized something didn't add up. What? She wasn't planning to build a company. Then what was she planning? She was planning to put the company in my name, transfer assets into it, and then disappear. My hands tightened around the wheel. Disappear where? I don't know. He paused. She planned to make me responsible for everything. That was the moment I understood the real shape of the betrayal. Claire hadn't trusted Daniel. She hadn't loved Daniel. She had been using him too. And somehow, that didn't make me feel better. It made me realize how dangerous she was. What do you want? I asked. To correct what I helped start. Why? Because I finally understood that the person I remembered from 20 years ago isn't the person she became. I looked at the clock. 8:03. Can you prove it? Yes. Then don't tell me anything else. What? Let my attorney handle it. Daniel agreed. That afternoon, Evelyn met with me. She had already contacted the relevant professionals and started putting safeguards around my legitimate financial interests. But she told me something I didn't expect. Mara, this isn't just about the money. I know. No. I mean there's another layer. She showed me a document. The business entity Daniel mentioned had an unusual ownership structure. Claire wasn't listed. Neither was Daniel. A third person was. My stomach dropped when I saw the name. My older sister, Rebecca. I stared at the page. No. Evelyn watched me carefully. Do you know her financial situation? She's been struggling. How long? About 2 years. Did Claire know? Yes. I sat back. Rebecca and I had always been close, though life had pulled us in different directions. She had divorced her husband 2 years earlier, and had accumulated debt after taking time away from work to care for our mother. Claire had always been unusually sympathetic toward her. She sent Rebecca money, called her, bought groceries. I had thought it was kindness. Now I wasn't sure. I called Rebecca. She answered immediately. Hey. Where are you? A pause. Why? Rebecca. Silence. Then she said. At home. Did Claire ask you to sign something? Her breathing changed. Mara. Did she? She started crying. Not dramatically. Just one quiet breath that broke in the middle. I didn't know. I closed my eyes. What did you sign? I thought it was a loan agreement. How much? 20,000. I swallowed. Rebecca, listen carefully. Don't sign anything else. I already knew something was wrong. Why? Because Claire called me yesterday. What did she say? She said if anyone asked, I should tell them you were planning to sell the house and leave her with the debt. I felt cold. Rebecca whispered. I didn't know what to do. You're going to do exactly what you should have done. What? Tell the truth. She started crying harder. I've been so stupid. No. I looked down at the document. You were desperate. She knew that. For the first time since hearing the Bluetooth conversation, I felt something other than fear. Clarity. Claire had built her plan around people being too ashamed to speak. She had counted on my trust, Rebecca's desperation, Daniel's guilt, and my silence. She had mistaken all three for weakness. That was her mistake. Over the next 48 hours, everything changed. Daniel provided evidence to Evelyn. Rebecca gave her copies of the documents she had signed. The professionals involved began reviewing the records. I secured independent legal and financial advice. I didn't secretly hack Claire's phone. I didn't follow her. I didn't threaten her. I simply stopped giving her access to the version of me she believed she controlled. That was harder than it sounds. Because every night she came home and asked about my day. Every night she kissed me. Every night she smiled. And every night I wondered whether she knew I had discovered everything. Saturday morning she said, we should go out for breakfast. I looked at her. Sure. We sat across from each other in a little cafe we had visited dozens of times. She ordered pancakes. I ordered coffee. She talked about a client. I listened. Then she reached across the table. You know I love you, right? Ich zerrte her. There it was. The sentence she had used whenever she wanted me to stop asking questions. I know, I said. She smiled. But her fingers tightened around her fork. For the first time, I realized she was nervous too. That gave me something I hadn't had all week. Time. She didn't know how much I knew. And as long as she didn't know, she couldn't easily change her plan. That afternoon, Evelyn called. She filed. I sat down. What? Claire has initiated divorce proceedings. My chest tightened. Already? Yes. On what grounds? She claims the marriage has been financially unstable, and that she fears you may conceal assets. I almost laughed. It wasn't funny. It was simply unbelievable. She had created the problem, then accused me of causing it. But Evelyn wasn't finished. There's more. What? She's requesting temporary control over several accounts. I stared out the window. Will she get it? Not if the documentation holds. Then let her ask. Evelyn paused. Mara, you need to understand something. What? Winning this isn't about humiliating Claire. I know. It's about protecting yourself and telling the truth. I know. Good. I looked at the garden outside. The maple tree moved in the wind. For 12 years, I had thought revenge meant making someone feel the pain they caused. Now I understood something different. Sometimes revenge was simply refusing to become the person who hurt you. Monday morning, the first hearing was scheduled. Claire arrived with an attorney. She wore a navy suit. Her hair was perfect. She looked composed. I almost didn't recognize her. Then she saw me. For 1 second, something flickered across her face. Fear. It disappeared quickly. She walked toward me. Mara. I nodded. Claire. She looked at my attorney. Then back at me. You didn't have to make this ugly. You did that before I knew anything. Her jaw tightened. What are you talking about? I said nothing. The hearing proceeded. Facts replaced accusations. Documents replaced stories. The proposed asset transfers were examined. Rebecca's testimony was reviewed. Daniel's evidence was submitted through the proper channels. The story Claire had created began falling apart. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Piece by piece. That was almost more satisfying. Because lies often look powerful when they're spoken. They look much smaller when placed next to documents. By the end of the proceedings, the temporary financial requests were denied. The court ordered further review. Claire's attorney asked for time. Evelyn agreed. Outside the courthouse, Claire caught up with me. You talked to Daniel? It wasn't a question. I stopped. Yes. Her face changed. He betrayed me. I looked at her. No. She frowned. He did. You betrayed him too. She stared at me. Then she laughed. A small bitter laugh. You think you're better than me? No. Then why are you looking at me like that? I took a breath. Because I finally understand you. Her expression hardened. You don't know anything about me. I know you were willing to destroy your sister-in-law's financial security because she was desperate. Silence. I know you lied to Daniel. Her eyes narrowed. I know you lied about me. She looked away. And I know you spent months preparing to take control of things you had no right to control. Her voice dropped. You always thought you were smarter than everyone. No. I shook my head. I just finally stopped assuming you were honest. That hurt her. I could see it. Not because I had insulted her. Because I had removed the one thing she depended on. My belief in her. The following months were not easy. People imagine justice as a clean ending. It isn't. There were legal fees. Meetings. Documents. Arguments. Stress. There were nights when I woke at 2 in the morning wondering how I could have missed everything. There were mornings when I stared at the other side of the bed and felt the weight of 12 years. I mourned the marriage. Not because I wanted Claire back. Because I missed the woman I believed she was. Eventually, the legal process established what had happened. The proposed transfers were stopped. Rebecca was able to unwind her involvement after cooperating with the investigation and obtaining proper advice. Daniel formally withdrew from the business arrangement and accepted responsibility for his role in helping initiate it. Claire faced professional consequences because several representations she had made to business partners were shown to be false. The divorce was finalized months later. The house remained mine because I had purchased it before certain later arrangements and had the records to establish the ownership structure. But I didn't stay there. The first night after everything ended, I walked through every room. The kitchen, the bedroom, the hallway, the little office where Claire used to work. Every object seemed to carry a memory. Some beautiful, some painful. I realized I didn't want to spend the rest of my life living inside a museum of a marriage that no longer existed. So I sold the house. I moved to a smaller place near the lake. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms. A narrow balcony. Large windows. A kitchen that received morning sunlight. For the first time in years, I bought furniture without asking anyone else what they thought. I painted the bedroom green. I bought a ridiculous yellow chair because I liked it. I planted herbs on the balcony, and slowly, ordinary life returned. Rebecca and I became closer again. Not because the betrayal disappeared, because we learned how to speak about difficult things before shame could turn them into secrets. Daniel sent me one letter. I never replied. I didn't hate him, but forgiveness wasn't something I owed him. That was another lesson I learned. Healing doesn't require pretending the damage never happened. It requires deciding what the damage is allowed to control. 6 months after the divorce, I received an email from Claire. 3 sentences. She said she regretted what happened. She said she had lost more than she expected. And she said she hoped I was doing well. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I closed it. Not because I was angry. Because I finally understood that closure doesn't always come from another person's apology. Sometimes it comes when their name no longer has the power to change your heartbeat. A year later, I sat on my balcony one summer evening with a cup of coffee. The lake was quiet. A breeze moved through the trees. My phone buzzed. It was Rebecca. She had sent me a photograph of the little bakery she had opened with a friend. Underneath it she wrote, "Can you believe this?" I smiled. I wrote back, "I always knew you could." Then I put the phone down. For a few minutes, I simply listened to the evening. No secrets. No hidden accounts. No documents waiting to be discovered. No voice coming through a car speaker from a life I thought I understood. Just silence. Good silence. The kind that doesn't make you afraid. Sometimes I think about that night in the garage. The orange rolling across the floor. Claire's voice through the speakers. Daniel asking whether I would suspect anything. If my phone hadn't connected to her car that night, perhaps I would have discovered everything later. Perhaps I would have signed another document. Perhaps I would have lost money. Perhaps the damage would have been much worse. But I don't think that accidental connection saved me. I did. The connection only gave me information. What saved me was what I did with it. I didn't explode. I didn't retaliate. I didn't become cruel. I became careful. I asked questions. I gathered facts. E trusta profissionals. I protected people who had been manipulated. And I waited. That was the revenge Claire never expected. She thought she was winning because she had planned ahead. She didn't understand that preparation works both ways. She spent months constructing a story about me. I spent those same months quietly discovering the truth. In the end, I didn't destroy her. Her own choices did that. I simply stopped standing in their way. And maybe that's the part of the story I needed to learn most. Betrayal can make you desperate to prove that you were right. But you don't have to spend your life proving anything to the person who hurt you. Sometimes the strongest answer is building a life they no longer have access to. A life where you choose your own furniture, your own friends, your own future, your own peace. That evening, the sun disappeared behind the trees. I finished my coffee and went inside. My new home was quiet, warm, mine, and for the first time in 12 years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone else to decide what happened next. I already knew. I was